Hello everyone, welcome to the induction part 1 session for law. And what I would like to do is to introduce myself and talk to you a little bit about the course so that you have an understanding of how the law A-level will be structured and the sort of tasks we will be doing through the 2 years. And what will follow on from this is 4 more weeks of tasks for you to complete and send to me. So that I can mark and give you some feedback. So my name is Miss Davies and I will be your teacher for law. So I'm the sole teacher for law. I'm also going to be your head of year. So we'll hopefully have really close relationship over the next 2 years. I've been a teacher for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was a solicitor and I specialised in criminal defence. So I'm still a solicitor, but obviously I'm not practicing. And I've always taught law since I went into teaching, mainly A-level law, but also used to teach for the University of Bedfordshire on their foundation degree. So why study law? So, law is one of the most employable subjects. It develops really key skills that are transferable across a number of careers and areas. What you will do as part of this week is to look at a careers matching exercise where you can look at the vast range of careers available once you've studied law, but it really is a transferable subject. Many of the things we'll be doing through classroom activities will be problem solving, advising people on their liability for particular crimes or offences. We'll have the opportunity to debate and evaluate particular areas of law and talk about really interesting cases. You will be taught research skills, so we'll need to research law and key legal rulings that affect future face of particular areas or future cases. We'll be starting the year with activities to help you to learn about the court processes, and this forms part of your first module, which is called the legal system. Now, within the legal system unit, you'll be learning about 2 main areas of law, which are criminal and civil. And what you'll do through the course of the next couple of weeks is learn the differences between those 2 main areas of law. Essentially, criminal law is a public area of law. It affects everybody. And if you are accused of committing an offence, then you are prosecuted by the state. And we have a body called the Crown Prosecution Service who work with the police to prosecute people accused of committing criminal offences. But on the other hand, we also have a private area of law, which doesn't concern anybody and everybody. It concerns only those people who are party to that dispute or agreement. So these cover private disputes between individuals and businesses. And we'll be reviewing some key areas of those of civil law, in particular tort and contract. Now, you may not know what is meant by tort law at the moment, but we will go through that at a later stage, so please don't worry about that. We will inevitably be learning a lot of case law and looking at some really fantastic cases, and you'll have to come into this with a very open mind. A lot of the stuff that we discuss, is of a sensitive nature. We're talking about sexual assaults, murders, thefts, robberies, some cases of the most violent and sadistic nature, really. Of course, they're really interesting, but these are all real life cases. So just be aware that some of the content will be sensitive. And of course, if anybody has any concerns about this, please do let me know. At the beginning of the course, you will have a schedule of learning, so you will know what's coming up. And if there are any issues or queries about any particular areas, you'll be able to speak to me about that. In your subject handbooks, which will be given to you or available with this tutorial, you'll be able to also look at an overview schedule of learning in there. So please do have a look at that handbook as well. And of course, as I say, this is a really transferable subject that can be a platform for lots of careers and studies. It is the fifth most employable subject after only medicine and education. It's really employable if you look at the number of graduates that are employed. And what's really great and what's taken off now is the opportunity to go into an apprenticeship in law. The law and accountancy sectors are really leading the way for apprenticeships. So if you think university isn't quite for you, then looking at apprenticeships in one of these areas is certainly going to be a viable option. So potential roles, the traditional role that many students want to go on and do if they're interested in a career in law would be a solicitor or a barrister. Now, traditionally, these two were very separate roles. The solicitor would meet with the client and prepare their case, if you like. And if their case was going to get to court, then that would be passed over to a barrister who would then be the advocate and the mouthpiece for the client in court. But actually, what we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years is a merge of those roles. And the two now are very similar. And actually, you can become, as I was, a solicitor advocate where you are doing the best of both. You're meeting the client, preparing the case, but also able to represent them in court as well. And you'll be able to do your task to look at the variety of other careers roles that are out there. There are a lot of solicitors and barristers out there. This is a competitive field, but it's absolutely one that is within your reach. And that's what I would say to anybody and everybody who is interested or open-minded about taking this route. There are some changes, as I say, to the profession. You can look at apprenticeships. You could also, instead of university, do some exams through the Institute of Legal Executives to become a legal executive, and you can do very similar work to a solicitor in that regard as well. And this was always traditionally known as the non-academic route to going into law. So those are just some of the key professions, but of course, A-level law isn't just about wanting to go into law later. This is about studying a fantastic subject which can open and broaden your horizons to what is available out there. So over the next 5 weeks of induction, you'll be able to define what is meant by law, identify and understand the requirements of your course, and as I said previously, identify the main differences between those two main types of law, both civil and criminal. Name some offences relating to your subject areas, and hopefully you'll be able to have a go at identifying the offences that somebody's potentially committing and giving them a bit of advice. So that'll be really great. And researching key areas of law as well. And of course, our induction will continue in September, and we spend time looking at the processes of law, and also hopefully we'll be able to go to the courts in September. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what happens with the current situation, but this is something that I would usually do as part of the induction. So you can actually go and see what happens firsthand rather than listening to me or watching a video. Towards the end of the induction 5 weeks in the summer, you'll have a couple of landmark cases. So these are really important cases that have been decided by some of our top courts. You'll be able to read the facts and actually form opinions on those cases, which is known as evaluation. It's really important that you are able to discuss the effect of decisions in these important cases. These cases affect everybody. And only those cases that affect everybody are able to go up to the top courts and be heard. So what will we learn on the A-level? So if you see top left, surrounded by the word law, you've got a number of different legal areas. There are so many areas of law out there. And of course, this is the A-level, so we can't study everything. If you want to pursue law further, then you may want to study a law degree. Which will in turn cover more of these areas of law. There are so many different areas out there. Even to add to this list, you've got media and entertainment law, sports law, intellectual properties. There are so many different areas that you might find one that you're really interested in. A friend of mine that I went to university with loved horses, and she actually specialises in equestrian law now. She specialises in compensation claims where people have been injured badly through accidents with horses. So there are just so many niche areas out there. But the main areas that we're going to learn on the A level will be criminal law, tort law, and contract law. So you might want to just have a look at what those areas cover. And you can have a look at that in the subject handbook and also online. We study through OCR, so you can have a look at the specification that's downloadable on the website too, if you would like to. We work to the new specification, so the one that was in place from 2017. So just make sure you don't click on the old specification. So what we start by learning is how the legal system is set up. So you see at the top here, we look at the criminal and civil court and appeals processes, and then the personnel, so people that are involved within the legal system as well. So we look at the role and the qualifications and the selection of a judge, so a member of the judiciary, right through to the jury and how they are selected. I don't know whether any of you know much about the jury system here, but you can be called randomly to sit on a case, one of the most serious cases in the Crown Court, and make a decision about whether the accused is guilty or not guilty. You do not need a background in law, and it is a random selection once you turn the age of 18. And you're a member of the criminal justice system when you do that. So it's a real fantastic opportunity for people who are called to have an insight into the criminal justice process. So we will learn all about those different roles. You will, within that unit, also learn how to become a solicitor or a barrister or a legal executive. It is part of the examinable content, but equally it's something that may be of interest to many of you thinking about taking this route later on. Then we'll go on to the processes of lawmaking, so how law is made. Really uniquely and interestingly in our legal system, and when I say our legal system, I'm referring to England and Wales, we have two processes of making law. We have Parliament that makes law, so the Houses of Parliament. We have the House of Lords and the House of Commons sit together to make acts. So you might have heard of particular acts in the news. I've put one here as an example, the Criminal Justice Act. But equally, it'd be the Hunting Act, the Health Act, Health and Safety at Work Acts. There are lots of acts out there, and these have been made by Parliament. These are what we call primary sources of law. They take precedence and they are supreme, if you like. We have to go to those first before any other type of law made. Parliament can delegate their power of law to other lawmaking bodies. Local councils, for example, might want to make a law that affects their particular area. So Central Beds Council, for example, here could make a law that affects only people within Central Bedfordshire, and that can be done using the powers given to them by Parliament. But also what is unique is that judges can make laws too. So judges through our appeal court system can actually change the law and shape the law to keep up with modern times. So if a case comes to them for appeal and there is a part of the law that is unfair or just doesn't quite fit that case, because it's not one size fits all, every case is different and turns on its own facts, then what a judge can do, or a panel of judges depending on which court, they can actually decide to create a law. They can create offences, they can remove offences, they can overrule past decisions, and they can even amend and adapt. So many of our key offences have been created by judges. And you may be interested to know that the offence of murder was created by a judge in the 1700s, Lord Justice Coke. It has never been legislated by Parliament. Parliament have not created that offence. That just shows you how important that role is in our legal system. And then finally, within that unit, we will look at the process of reforming law. So, of course, judges can improve and modernise law through their lawmaking powers. But we do have other bodies that are government funded that look at areas of law and propose changes to them. Nobody can change law apart from the people with the lawmaking powers, so Parliament and judges. So these other bodies are merely suggesting changes, and they are more of a research function. One of the main bodies that springs to mind is the Law Commission. They are a government-funded body who are set up to do reviews of law. They're headed up by lawyers, but equally it's a really good opportunity for work experience for people who want to go and get a bit more research experience if they choose to go on to study law further. So once we've got the grounding about the legal system and the lawmaking processes, we then move on to studying the areas of law. And these are, of course, favourites of students. So we will learn about criminal law, so we'll learn about murder, manslaughter, robbery, theft, non-fatal offences ranging from assault up to grievous bodily harm. We will also learn about defences, so things that can either remove or reduce your liability. They provide an excuse, if you like, as long as they are justified. So defences such as self-defence, claiming insanity, or even diminished responsibility or loss of control for murder. So there are a number of defences there that we will look at. With tort and contract, these are civil and private areas of law. And essentially with tort, this is a French word from the word tortious. This means a wrong, so being wronged by somebody. They cover a wide range of neighbourhood disputes. You might have heard of the term negligence. If somebody's been negligent to you, then you could potentially sue and claim compensation. Particularly road traffic accidents come under this area. And of course, if you have an agreement that is recognised as a contract with somebody and they break a term of that contract, then again, you can privately bring an action against them. So we will look at those areas as well. In terms of assessments, you'll be able to look at the assessments, the assessment methods and potential dates in the subject handbook, but these are all examinable. So there is no coursework for law. You will have 3 exams at the end of the 2 years, and across those 3 exams, most of the exam time will be spent advising and evaluating areas of criminal, tort and contracts. They're separated out across the 3 units. Within your bridging tasks, that hopefully most of you have looked at, these are available on our website as well. You need to look at the units so you can get this information from the subject handbook and just make sure that you're clear what those units are and how they are assessed. Okay, so I'm just going to spend a little bit of time going through the difference between our main areas of law, criminal and civil, because next week your task will be to do a matching exercise for descriptions of criminal and civil law, and then answer a 10-question document for me. So criminal law is a public area of law. That means it affects everybody, and interestingly, it is open to the public. Criminal justice system, you can go to a criminal court and watch a case as long as you're over the age of 16, and anybody can do that. So any of you could go and watch a case at the local magistrate's court or at your nearest Crown Court, and you can watch trials, sentences, bail applications, everything. With the appeal courts, many of these are in London because, of course, they are fewer. These are still available to the public, and often there are tours available around these as well. And many appeal courts have actually gone online, so you can watch appeals that are held at our Supreme Court, which is our top court in our legal system. So if you look at the Supreme Court website online, you can actually watch some hearings. I'd have to say it would be more interesting to go to a magistrate's or Crown Court, but that's certainly something you can look at whilst you're at home. So criminal law essentially regulates society. It brings order. So it sets out the types of behaviour that are forbidden and at risk of punishment. And these are created by both Parliament and by judges. So the state brings an action against a person who is accused. and the state, when you see a case, when you're looking at a case, a criminal case, it will have a citation, so a title, if you like. And usually it will be Regina against, so obviously R standing for Crown. And this Crown Prosecution Service is the body that is set up by the government. It was set up in 1986 to bring prosecutions against individuals or co-defendants who are accused of committing crimes. The name will be the surname of somebody. If that person is a minor, then that will be anonymised, so you won't hear reports of those cases in the media. And in fact, although I've said courts are public, youth courts, and these are courts for defendants from the age of 10 to 17, these courts are private and not open to the public. So these sorts of cases are tried in both the magistrates and the Crown courts, depending on their seriousness. And part of what we do when we start learning content from the A-level is look at the difference between these courts. We have magistrates who hear cases in the magistrates' court, but in the Crown court we have a bit more of a varied personnel, where we have a jury who come to hear trials. So if somebody's pleaded not guilty and they're going to have a trial, which is essentially a process where we hear from witnesses, we test the evidence as both lawyers for the state and for the defendant, and the jury listens to all of the evidence. They listen to guidance from the judge about the relevant law in issue, and a summary of the facts, and then they go off and they decide what the verdict should be, and that verdict has to be guilty or not guilty, on or beyond reasonable doubt. And beyond reasonable doubt is the standard of proof, so it's very high. If I was going to quantify, I'd say at least 99% sure that somebody is guilty or not. If as a jury you can't decide, then you have to deliver a verdict of not being able to decide. And what that then means is that there is hung jury. The jury get discharged and the defendant essentially goes free unless the prosecution decide to retry, and they have 28 days to decide that. So when we learn about juries, we will look into those processes in a bit more detail. It's all very exciting. If you are found guilty, or you plead guilty, because of course you can accept or admit liability, you can say, I am guilty of the offence, I hold my hands up, it was me, then you will be sentenced. And we will learn about sentencing. You all probably are aware that people can be sentenced to prison. These are called custodial sentences. So prison can be immediate or it can be suspended. It ranges from life, and we'll look at what a life sentence actually is. It's a lot more complex than you may realise at this time. Life isn't always going to be life in prison, but it can be, depending on the seriousness. These sentences could also range to sentences in the community. So you could be given a community order for up to 3 years, or dealt with by way of a financial penalty or another lower level sentence. So we will learn about. And then civil law, in contrast, is a private area. There are courts that are set up to hear disputes between individuals or businesses. So the citation of a case there, if you were to look at a civil case online, would be the person who brings the action goes first against another person. Let's say I wanted to sue a builder for compensation because they did a shoddy job on my house, then the citation would be Davies against, and then the builder's name, and I'd be bringing that action against the builder. Essentially, I'm the claimant because I'm claiming, and the builder is the defendant. So defendant is a term that is used across both civil and criminal proceedings. There are a number of areas that can be that can come under civil law. So you've got contract law, tort, which is wrongs, negligence or nuisance, Family, and family law is such a wide area, ranges from divorce to child welfare matters. Divorce can be split up into the grounds for divorce and the financial side of divorce as well. Family law can also cover guardianship and other mental health matters as well. We have employment law, so laws governing the relationship between an employer and employee. So if you're sacked unfairly, you believe you have a case, then you can bring an action. And for these particular areas like employment, land and family, they have their own particular courts. So there are family courts. There are also what we call tribunals that deal with specific disputes for employment and land. They all have their own judges and people that make the decisions. These courts do not have juries, and very rarely would you ever see a jury in a civil court. Okay, so the bog standard civil cases, if you like, your contract and tort cases, will be dealt with through the county courts and the high courts. The high court divisions are based in London, but every local authority will have a county court, just like a magistrate's court in the criminal proceedings. So the closest one to you, Milton Keynes or Aylesbury or Bedford or Dunstable, or in fact, I think not Dunstable, but Luton would have county and definitely magistrates' court. So in a civil case, as I said, very unlikely to ever see a jury. So you have a judge, and obviously the higher up the court structure we have more judges, like a panel. But in the lower courts, you have lower level judges. And these have all been lawyers or legal executives. When I use the term lawyer, I mean solicitor or barrister. It's kind of a, not a slang term, but it's a generic term. So I kind of combine the two. I suppose it's technically incorrect. You tend to have lawyers in America. You know, if you train to go into law in America, then you do automatically, you are a combination of a solicitor and barrister. But here we still very much have the two separate professions, and lawyer kind of brings those two together. So yeah, I mean, judges have been lawyers, solicitor or barrister in previous roles. It's a very well paid job, and you start as a district judge initially and you work your way up the structure, and we will spend some time looking at the roles of judges and the hierarchy of judges and actually the salaries as well, because I find people are normally quite interested in things like that. So judges, if you like, in civil courts are judge and jury. They make decisions on the law, but they also decide the outcome. But in civil cases, they're making this decision on a lower standard of proof. So it's not beyond reasonable doubt. It's actually on the balance of probabilities. So on the balance, and you see I've got scales in the background of this presentation. And law is all about weighing up evidence. That's what the role is about. It's about, particularly in court, looking at evidence. Is it admissible? Is it fair? Does it bring justice? Are we sure that somebody's guilty? And so forth. Are we sure that witness is telling the truth? And in civil courts, that standard is just a bit lower. Again, if I was to quantify in terms of percentage, it has to be over 50%. You're more sure than not that somebody is liable, but it's not going to be your 99%. This is, are you more sure than not that you should find in favour of the claimant or the defendant? And if you decide liability, let's say you find in favour of the claimant and against the defendant here, then we're not looking at sentencing that individual, we're looking at other outcomes. Usually if you bring an action in a civil court, you want something in particular. You want money, so compensation, or you want an order to be made. Maybe you want an injunction made against that individual, or another specific order. Maybe this is about property, about assets, or about children. So a judge, once they decide who they're going to award in favour of, they then decide what the outcome would be. And in some cases, compensation can be unlimited. So this is something for you to pause and spend some time looking at. But this is an offences scene. So there is a hell of a lot going on here, a range of offences, so many wrong things going on. I mean, nobody would want to live in this area. But what I wanted you to do, now that you have a basic understanding of the difference between criminal and civil law, is just see if you could identify what potential offences would be on this scene, what criminal offences are going on here, what civil offences are going on here. And you don't necessarily need to know the exact offence name, but if you look, the fact that an underage hotel is being run from this building, or the fact that there are clearly what you could assume to be prostitutes here soliciting, or you have something that maybe looks like a dangerous dog here chasing somebody, or you have something going on that's wrong with the car here, and particularly the car veering off and nearly seriously injuring people here. Are these criminal or civil matters? You have something top right where a chemist is advertising a new flu cure. Is that criminal or is that going to be civil? If you go and buy the cure from that chemist and it doesn't cure you, maybe it makes you really ill. Is that a criminal matter or is that a civil matter? And then you have other things that might look a little bit more obvious, like going back to this hotel, people that are clearly stealing, they're taking a television. You've got two people doing this here, and of course you can work jointly in criminal activities, but also you've got the person that is holding the ladder and assisting, and they could argue, well, we're not guilty of anything, we didn't even go in the property. Are they also going to be jointly liable? So just have a look, and when we meet, we will come back to this and have a bit of a discussion. So finally, to end the session, I hope you found it really useful, but I just want you to have a think about what is law, because we all talk about law, we might have an interest in law, we might really like watching things on TV about law, so many documentaries on Netflix and other portals where you can watch criminal investigations and programs about people in prison and murders and whatnot. And it's certainly a passion of mine to watch investigative documentaries. I absolutely love it. And it's something that hopefully we'll be able to talk about together. But how are we going to define law? And some of you who have completed the bridging task may have already had a think and a look. The definition that I get from the Oxford Dictionary is something that says the whole system of rules that everyone in a country or society must obey. So our legal system being England and Wales, because in Ireland and Scotland there are slightly different processes and rules, although because we're part of the United Kingdom there is, of course, similarity. And of course we're part of the Commonwealth, so many Commonwealth countries do have similar rules to us as well, and certainly their laws can be persuasive to us and vice versa. These are rules and systems that we must obey. If we don't obey them, then we are going to be subject to punishment or enforcement. So there are three different definitions here that I've taken from theorists, and I just want you to have a look and just see what you prefer. And in actual fact, they're all kind of similar, but they have different wording. You might think that option C is more slightly sociological, and part of the law course will overlap with sociology and in fact psychology when we're looking at the state of mind of offenders. Of course that overlaps with the criminal aspect of psychology, but also when we towards the end of the course look at whether law achieves justice, how does law sit with morals of people in society, where do morals come from, how do we have and grow our set of morals. That's definitely sociological, and some of the tasks through this induction process will require you to look at cases and just think about whether that case achieves justice, how it sits with the morals. So I hope you found this useful, and obviously if you have any questions, please do contact me through email, and there will be work to submit from next week. So take your time and watch us through a number of times if you want to, make some notes. A bit of housekeeping in relation to law. I've said in the induction for your whole year group that it would be a good idea to buy a diary. Please do buy some kind of diary or speak to us. We will be selling some, because it will just really help you to get organised. And in law as well, make sure you have some folders. You'd probably be better to buy 4 if you can, but certainly you can start off with 1, and you can end up with a folder per unit. Remember, there are 3 units, but you might just want a 4th folder for your revision notes and your summary notes. So once we finish the topic, you summarise what you've learnt, and then you put that into a revision folder, and that can help you, particularly because we're looking at assessments in the second year. So, things have changed now with A-levels, so it's important to be organised and in effect revising from the beginning.